Hello Amusement Park Portal! Thank you for tuning in to our latest video where we're going to look at Maverick at Cedar Point and whether or not you think it's overrated or not. So let's jump right in. Now before I start getting a bunch of hate mail saying, "Oh, Maverick's a great coaster, how can you talk down about it?" I'm not talking down. As a matter of fact, I think it's a great ride. It's a lot of fun. Heck, even when it first opened in 2007, it won a golden ticket for New Coaster of the Year. There are a lot of pros and cons to Maverick. We'll go over that in just a moment, but first, before we do that, let's take a look at some of Maverick's stats. Maverick has a top speed of 70 miles per hour. It'll take you up 105 feet. It cost the park $21 million back when it opened on May 26, 2007. Has 2 inversions and a capacity of 1,200 people per hour. And it was produced by Intamin. Alright, now let's get into the pros and cons, starting with the pros. The layout of the ride. This layout is awesome. It really encompasses the landscape around it, and especially the part where you go over the little pond area over where Snake River Falls used to be, and you go right into that little cavern. It's awesome. I kudos to Intamin for making such a great layout. Another one we could put in the pros column for Maverick is the powerful launches. Not only is the lift hill a launch, but also there's a powerful launch underneath the station that'll launch you out of a tunnel at a top speed of 70 miles per hour. Another positive aspect of Maverick are the comfortable restraints. I'm not gonna lie, these are some of the most comfortable restraints in the entire park. The OTSRs on here are perfect. They don't interfere with the ride whatsoever, there's no headbanging on it, and it just makes for a much better ride. And the final item we have in the pros column is the ride's theme. Now the ride's theme fits in perfectly with the surrounding Frontier Town theme. Everything from the signage to the rock work throughout the ride, it just looks like it belongs there. And what a lot of people may not realize is the queue house for Maverick used to be home to Whitewater Landing, the park's log ride that they had back in the day. And if you look closely in some areas, you can still see some remnants of Whitewater Landing today. Alright, now let's jump into the cons of Maverick. First off is the ride's hard molded seats that are very uncomfortable. Unlike the ride's OTSRs, which we already mentioned are extremely comfortable, the molded seat for which you sit on, I can't say the same about that. It digs into your bottom side during, some of the heavier forces during the ride, and it's just not pleasant. And it seems to be a lot more unpleasant for the males in the group. Females, not so much. If they were just to fix one thing on this ride, this would probably be my number one pick for first thing to get fixed. Alright, the second item to fall into the cons category for Maverick is the second launch. Now the problem with the second launch isn't the launch itself. As a matter of fact, the launch itself is very forceful and one of my favorite parts of the ride. The problem is what comes after the launch. They launch you out of this tunnel at 70 miles an hour just to be brought up this hill into a set of trim brakes. Now, that kind of kills the momentum of the ride for me. Now, at the end of the day, I understand why the trim brakes are needed on this coaster at this point. However, you can't deny that it does take away from one of the best parts of the ride being that launch in the tunnel. And for that reason, that's why I put this in the cons category. Next up in our cons category is bad engineering. Now, most of the elements on Maverick are graceful or have just enough snap to them to make them enjoyable. However, there are some elements on this ride that are just plain out brutal. You snap through them a little bit too hard and it can get violent at times. And another thing that we could put into the bad engineering category is the removed Heartline roll. That's right, this ride used to have a Heartline roll element as shown here. During the testing phase of Maverick, it was determined that this element was a little bit too forceful for people to handle, so it was removed and it was replaced with this little, twisty element, I guess we'll call it. And due to the park having to replace this element of the ride at the last minute, the ride's opening was delayed by 2 weeks. And people are always asking me, what happened to the heart roll element that was removed from Maverick? Well, apparently it's sitting in some random field in Ohio somewhere to this day. And the last item in the ride's cons category is its reliability. It's no secret that this isn't the most reliable coaster in the park. You can almost count on this ride breaking down at least once or twice a day. However, I give Maverick credit. It is a pretty advanced ride, so it's understandable why it may have so much downtime. Well, there you have it. There's the pros and cons of Maverick, in our opinion. I want to know what you think about Maverick and where it lands on your list of coasters. Does this land on your top 5 list? Or do you agree and think that Maverick is a bit overrated by some enthusiasts? And as always, we want to thank you guys for tuning in and watching. And please don't forget to hit that subscribe and like buttons down there at the bottom. It really does help us out. So once again, thanks for watching, and we'll see you guys out on the Midway real soon.